somewhere in America, a grown adult quit their job because the carpet was beige. Another one, rage walked out over 8 almonds. And one man, one brave, beautiful man, submitted his resignation because the nap room had a no sleeping policy, and nobody would explain why it existed. These are not characters from a Netflix show. These are real employees, real jobs, and absolutely unhinged real decisions, and we have 49 of them. Hit that hype button right now, because this video is about to make you feel like the most mentally stable person in the entire workforce. 1. A middle-aged man showed up to work one morning feeling completely normal about his life choices. He walked into the break room, heated up his lunch, and stood there waiting. The microwave finished and beeped exactly one time, one single beep. He stared at it for a long moment, and then told his coworker standing nearby that he did not appreciate the attitude. His coworker thought he was joking. He was not joking at all. He walked straight to HR and handed in his resignation letter that same afternoon. HR asked him to explain his reason for leaving. He wrote down a microwave attitude problem and submitted it without any further explanation. 2. A young woman started a new job and was genuinely excited about her future there. She set up her desk carefully and arranged everything just the way she liked it. Then she noticed the office printer was positioned directly across from her workspace, facing her completely. Every single day she felt its presence. She told her friend over lunch that the printer was making eye contact with her, and it was making her deeply uncomfortable. Her friend told her that printers do not have eyes. She knew that. She still felt watched. After 2 weeks of this silent staring contest, she packed her things and never came back. 3. A guy walked into the break room every single morning with genuine hope in his heart. The coffee was always there waiting for him. It was never good, and it was never bad. It was just medium, aggressively medium. He reported this to management 3 Tuesdays in a row, and they stared at him like he had lost his mind. He had not lost his mind. He simply had standards. He submitted his resignation on the 4th Tuesday and finally made his own coffee at home. 4. A woman opened her work email one morning and found another message from her boss ending with "per my last email." She sat completely still for a long moment. She had received this phrase 11 times in 1 month. Each time it felt less like a reminder and more like a spiritual attack directed specifically at her. She forwarded the email to her best friend with the subject line, "Do you see this?" Her friend said yes. She walked to HR that afternoon and never looked back. 5. An office worker stepped into the bathroom before his 2:00 meeting feeling completely prepared for the day. He hit the hand dryer button and stood there. The warm air hit him directly in the face and pushed every strand of hair slightly forward onto his forehead. He looked in the mirror. He looked ridiculous. He spent 4 minutes trying to fix it and made it worse. He walked back to his desk and typed his resignation because no building that did this to people deserved his loyalty. 6. She had been saying good morning to the plant on her desk every single day for 8 months. She asked about its weekend. She gave it encouragement during stressful periods. And one afternoon, a cleaning staff member bumped it, and it fell over without any soil coming out. She picked it up and stared at it. It was completely fake. It had always been fake. She sat down slowly and began drafting her resignation because she could not work somewhere that had allowed her to emotionally invest in plastic. 7. This guy had one simple requirement from his workplace, and that was basic chair respect. Every morning he rolled his chair out and sat down, and it made a completely normal sound. But the moment anyone else sat in it during a meeting, it made a completely different sound. A confident sound. A sound that suggested the chair preferred other people. He mentioned this to his team, and they laughed for 4 minutes straight. He did not find it funny. He resigned the following week with his dignity fully intact. Fire 8. An older gentleman had discovered a motivational poster about wolves during his 2nd week at the company and felt an immediate, deep personal connection to it. He told 3 different coworkers about the poster. None of them cared. He brought it up in a team meeting once, and someone changed the subject within seconds. He realized then that he was working among people who simply did not understand wolf energy. He packed his belongings on a Friday and left to find a workplace that respected the wolves. 9. Every Wednesday morning, this man stepped into the elevator and pressed his floor button like a normal person. Then he waited and waited. The elevator took exactly 4 extra seconds on Wednesdays compared to every other day of the week. He timed it repeatedly to confirm. He brought this up with building management, and they told him elevators do not have schedules. He knew what he experienced. After 6 Wednesdays of this unexplained delay, he decided his time was too valuable for a building playing games with him. 10. A woman walked over to adjust the office thermostat one afternoon because the room was genuinely freezing. She reached out and discovered it was locked inside a glass case mounted to the wall. She stood there staring at it like it was a museum exhibit. She asked her manager who had the key. Her manager said facilities controlled the temperature remotely. She asked when they could turn up the heat. He said he would submit a request. She submitted her resignation before facilities ever submitted anything. 11. A man noticed on his very first week that the office windows only opened halfway and stopped with a firm click. He tried again the next day thinking it was a mistake. Same result. He asked the building manager why the windows could not open all the way. The manager explained it was a safety feature. This man stood quietly for a moment and then said out loud that the building did not trust him. The manager had no response. He handed in his resignation letter that Friday because trust was non-negotiable. 12. This young woman pressed B4 on the vending machine every single Tuesday for her afternoon pretzels. One Tuesday, the machine hummed loudly and dropped a bag of Lay's chips instead. She stood there staring at the chips through the glass. She went to her manager and explained what happened. Her manager told her to just eat the chips. However, she explained that was not the point. Nobody in that office understood that the point was never about the chips. She quit 3 days later and the vending machine never apologized. 13. A guy logged into the company Slack on his first morning and immediately found the team channel. It was called Fun Squad. He read the name twice. He looked around the office at the gray walls and the fluorescent lighting and the complete absence of any human joy. He scrolled through 6 months of message history in that channel and found 0 evidence of fun ever occurring. He typed a message asking if anyone was actually having fun. Nobody responded. He resigned before lunch and felt genuinely relieved driving home. 14. A woman arrived at her new job absolutely ready to participate in Casual Friday. And she stood out in her closet Thursday night for 45 minutes trying to figure out what casual meant at this particular company. She asked 3 coworkers the next morning and got 3 completely different answers. One said smart casual, one said business casual, one said just be comfortable. She spent the entire day in a state of deep uncertainty about her outfit. She went home and typed her resignation because ambiguity at that level was simply unlivable. 15. He counted the parking spots on his second day because something felt wrong. There were 47 spots for 48 employees. He brought this up to management with a simple spreadsheet showing the math. His manager looked at the spreadsheet and said the situation builds character. This man sat with that response for 3 full days. He thought about it during lunch. Then he thought about it during meetings. He eventually concluded that his character was already fully built, and he did not need a parking lot to finish the job. 16. A woman sat through her entire onboarding session, taking careful notes and feeling cautiously optimistic. Then her onboarding buddy leaned over during lunch and said they were all just one big family here. She smiled politely and said nothing. She thought about her actual family on the drive home. Her actual family was already exhausting. She could not voluntarily sign up for a second one that also expected her to show up at 8 in the morning. She emailed her resignation that evening before she even unpacked her work bag. 17. This man noticed the fish tank in the lobby during his interview and thought it was a lovely touch. but he assumed it meant the company had warmth. On his third day, he stood in front of the tank and said good morning to the fish as a friendly gesture. Not one fish acknowledged him. He tried again the next morning. Complete indifference. He had worked with unresponsive coworkers before, but never one's this blatant about it. He handed in his notice at the end of the week, and the fish said nothing then either. 18. A woman read through the entire company dress code document on her first day because she liked to be prepared. She read it twice. She noticed it covered shirts and trousers and shoes in careful detail. It said nothing about socks. She emailed HR asking for clarification on the sock policy. HR responded saying socks were not covered in the document. She replied asking what that meant practically. HR stopped responding. She spent 2 weeks in genuine, ethical distress about her socks before deciding no job was worth this level of daily uncertainty. 19. An older man was told during his tour that the conference room was called the Innovation Hub. He nodded and said that sounded exciting. He used that room for 11 months straight. Every meeting inside it followed the exact same format, same agenda, same people talking, same outcomes. Nothing innovative happened once inside those 4 walls. He brought this up during a meeting held inside the Innovation Hub, and everyone stared at him. He looked around the room slowly and then submitted his resignation later that afternoon, out of respect for the word innovation. 20. She noticed the sticky G key on her keyboard during her very first week and reported it to IT immediately. IT told her a replacement would arrive in 2 to 3 business weeks. 4 weeks passed. She followed up. IT said it was still processing. She followed up again at 8 weeks. IT used the phrase still in the queue, which she had never heard used to describe a keyboard. After 5 months of typing every word that contained the letter G, with visible frustration, she packed her desk and left the keyboard behind as a farewell gift to nobody. 21. He walked into the break room on his first Monday and stood in front of 2 identical blue bins sitting side by side against the wall. One said recycling, one said trash. Both were the exact same shade of blue. He stood there holding an empty water bottle for 4 full minutes, trying to make the right choice. He asked a coworker which was which. The coworker shrugged and walked away. He asked another coworker who pointed at the wrong one confidently. He quit 2 weeks later because a workplace that set people up to fail this casually could not be trusted with his career. 22. A woman sent her manager a detailed project proposal she had spent 3 evenings working on. The response came back in under a minute. It said, "Sounds good." She sent a follow-up asking which specific parts the manager approved. The response came back in under a minute. It said, "Sounds good." This continued for 11 months, across dozens of emails covering budgets and deadlines and major decisions. She could never tell if she was doing brilliantly or being completely ignored. She resigned on a Tuesday and her manager responded to the resignation email with "Sounds good." 23. And this man walked into the office kitchen on his very first day carrying his lunch and looking for somewhere to sit. He picked a spot at the long table and sat down. The entire room went quiet. 3 people exchanged looks. Nobody said anything out loud, but the energy shifted completely. He later learned from a sympathetic coworker that he had sat in what everyone silently referred to as the Chad zone. Nobody had ever explained this zone to him during onboarding. He ate lunch at his desk for 2 weeks and then resigned because undocumented social rules were above his pay grade. 24. A woman arrived at her new job on Monday morning and asked the receptionist for the office Wi-Fi password so she could get started. The receptionist handed her a sticky note. She looked at it. Says the password was 27 characters long and contained uppercase letters and numbers and symbols, and at the very end, a single bracket. She typed it in wrong 4 times. She typed it in correctly on the 5th attempt and felt no sense of victory. She spent the rest of that day thinking about the bracket specifically. She resigned at the end of the week, citing the bracket directly in her exit form. 25. He discovered the nap room on his third day and felt genuinely impressed that the company offered one. He told his wife about it over dinner, and she said that sounded progressive. The next afternoon, he went in for a short rest and was immediately told by a passing manager that sleeping in the nap room was not permitted. He stood in the doorway and looked at the room. There were pillows. There was a blanket. Yeah, there was soft lighting. He asked what the room was for if not sleeping. Nobody could answer that question. He resigned shortly after because unanswered questions at that scale frightened him. 26. A man sat down with his lunch every Tuesday in the break room at exactly 12:30 and began eating peacefully. The fire alarm went off, he put down his fork, the drill ended, and he picked his fork back up. The following Tuesday, the exact same thing happened at the exact same moment. On the third Tuesday, he sat down with his lunch and looked at the ceiling and said out loud that he knew what was coming. The alarm went off before he finished the sentence. He submitted his resignation that afternoon and specifically mentioned in the exit interview that the building had done this on purpose. 27. So she clipped her work badge to her shirt on the first morning and glanced down at her job title. It said, Solutions Associate. She smiled and felt professional. By the end of month 1, she had not solved a single thing. By month 3, she had still not solved anything. She asked her manager what problems she was supposed to be solving. Her manager said it was more of a general title. She stared at her badge for a long moment and then informed HR that she could not in good conscience continue wearing a title that described capabilities she had never once been asked to use. 28. This man noticed the ping pong table on his first office tour and thought it seemed like a fun perk. He walked over to it on his second day and picked up a paddle. A senior team lead appeared from nowhere and explained the table was primarily for leadership use. He put the paddle down slowly. Over the following weeks, he watched only managers and team leads play on it while regular employees walked past pretending not to notice. He drew a small organizational chart one afternoon that placed the ping pong table at the very top. He resigned the next day and left the chart on his desk. 29. A man opened his first company-wide email and noticed the logo at the bottom. It was a clip art eagle, not a designed eagle, not an illustrated eagle. A clip art eagle that appeared to have been selected from a Microsoft Word document sometime around 2003. He assumed it was a placeholder. Months passed, and the eagle remained on every single email and every printed document and every presentation slide without any acknowledgement from anyone. He brought it up once in a meeting and was met with complete silence. He resigned eventually because he simply could not build a future at a company that had made peace with that eagle. 30. He sat down for his annual performance review, feeling reasonably confident about his year. His manager went through the usual points and then used the word adequate to describe his overall contribution. He nodded and said thank you and went back to his desk. He opened a dictionary application on his computer and looked up the word adequate. It said barely sufficient or satisfactory. He read that definition 3 times. He thought about the year he had just given that company. He typed his resignation letter that same afternoon and used the word adequate 4 times inside it so his manager would understand exactly how it felt. 31. A woman sat in the break room on a Friday afternoon, watching her coworkers gather around a birthday cake for a colleague. It was vanilla. She smiled and ate her slice and said nothing. This was the 4th birthday she had attended at this company. Every single cake had been vanilla. She had never once been asked about flavor. She went home that evening and thought about it seriously. She came back Monday and asked HR who decided the cake flavor. HR said it had always been vanilla. She submitted her resignation that afternoon because 4 years of not being asked was 4 years too many. 32. And this older gentleman badged into the office every single morning, feeling like a responsible and security-conscious employee. He pressed his badge to the reader and heard the beep and pulled the door open with purpose. Then he walked past the side entrance and saw the brick. The same brick that had been propping that door wide open every single day since he started. He asked facilities about it once, and they said it was temporary. That was 14 months ago. He removed the brick himself one morning and placed it on his manager's desk with a note that said, "I quit," and walked out. 33. He noticed the carpet on his first day, but said nothing because he was trying to be professional. It was beige. Not a warm beige or a classic beige. It was a specific shade that seemed to have been chosen to remind everyone inside the building that joy was not part of the lease agreement. He described it to his wife as the color of giving up, and she told him he was being dramatic. He was not being dramatic. After 8 months of staring at that carpet for 40 hours a week, he packed his desk on a quiet Thursday and walked out across it one final time. 34. A young man applied for the job specifically because the listing said unlimited paid time off in large, friendly letters. He accepted the offer feeling like he had won something. 3 months in, he submitted a request for 4 days off to visit his parents. His manager called him into a private meeting. 2 other people were present. The energy in the room suggested he had done something deeply wrong. And he sat through 20 minutes of questions about project timelines and team coverage for 4 days off. He withdrew the request quietly that day and then submitted his resignation the following morning because unlimited had clearly been used as a creative writing exercise. 35. She had followed the no food at desks policy carefully from day one because she respected rules. Every lunch she walked to the break room like a good employee. Then there was Susan. Susan from the legal department had been eating hard-boiled eggs at her desk openly and loudly every single afternoon for 2 years. She raised this with HR once and was told the situation was being monitored. She raised it again 6 months later and was told Susan had a medical accommodation. And she packed her belongings on a Wednesday and left a note on her desk that simply said, "I also have feelings, and they are not being monitored." 36. A man walked into the office on his first day and noticed the large printed company values mounted proudly on the wall near the entrance. He stopped and read them carefully. Integrity, excellence, passion. He nodded at integrity. He nodded at excellence. Then he got to passion, and his eyes stayed there for a long moment. The word passion had been printed in Comic Sans font. Not the other values, just passion. He went home and thought about it overnight. He came back the next morning and looked at it again. It was still Comic Sans. He handed in his notice at the end of that week. 37. And this woman had attended the company holiday party every year since joining, and had always shown up with genuine enthusiasm. The first year, the theme was Winter Wonderland, and she thought it was lovely. The second year, it was Winter Wonderland again, and she assumed they were building a tradition. By the 5th consecutive Winter Wonderland, she arrived at the venue and stood at the entrance looking at the fake snow and the identical decorations, and felt something leave her body permanently. She went home early that night and drafted her resignation. She cited creative fatigue as the official reason and meant every single word of it. 38. A woman opened the company-wide email on a Monday morning and read that the free snack program was being replaced with something called snack credits. She read the details carefully. Each employee would receive a weekly snack credit allowance. She did the maths on her phone sitting at her desk. Based on the credit value and the snack prices in the office kitchen, she calculated that her weekly allowance converted to approximately 8 almonds. She forwarded the email to her husband with the subject line, 8 almonds. He called her immediately. She was already updating her resume before he finished his first sentence. 39. He had sat through fire safety training every year without complaint because he understood the importance of workplace safety. This particular year, the trainer walked the group over to demonstrate the emergency exit procedure. The trainer reached the exit door and stopped. There was a large motivational poster mounted directly across the door frame. It said there are no shortcuts to success in bold capital letters. The trainer moved on without acknowledging it. This man stood in front of that poster for a long moment. He looked at the blocked exit. He looked at the poster again. He submitted his resignation before the training session had officially ended. 40. A woman set her alarm 5 minutes earlier every Monday, specifically so she would never be late to the 9 o'clock stand-up meeting. She arrived early every single time and sat ready with her notes open. The meeting started at 9:02 every week, without fail, without acknowledgement, and without apology. She tracked it for 2 months on a small notepad she kept in her drawer. 9:02. 9:02. 9:02. She presented the notepad data to her manager during a one-on-one, and her manager said meetings run a little loose around here. She resigned that afternoon because loose was not a system she could operate inside. 41. A man noticed his desk wobbled slightly on his very first day and reported it to facilities before he had even finished unpacking his bag. Facilities said they would look into it. He followed up after 2 weeks. They said it was still on the list. He followed up at the 2-month mark and was told a technician would be scheduled. At the 5-month mark, facilities sent him a survey asking whether he felt supported in his workspace. He stared at the survey for a very long time. He filled it out completely honestly. Then he packed his desk into the same bag he had unpacked 5 months ago and left the wobbly desk exactly as he found it. 42. She spotted the suggestion box mounted on the break room wall during her first week and felt genuinely encouraged that leadership wanted employee feedback. She wrote a thoughtful suggestion on a card and dropped it in the slot. Nothing happened. She wrote another one a month later. Still nothing. She started paying closer attention to the box itself. The paint around the slot was completely undisturbed. The hinge on the lid had no scratch marks from ever being opened. She pressed her ear against it one afternoon and heard her first 2 suggestions still sitting inside untouched. She resigned that Friday and dropped her resignation letter directly into the suggestion box as a final act. 43. And this man had attended dozens of work meetings without any serious complaints because he was a professional. Then one afternoon, a coworker named Derek sat across the table and said, "Per your request," out loud with his actual human mouth, during a live meeting in front of everyone, not in an email, not in a message, verbally. The room continued as if nothing had happened. This man looked around waiting for someone else to react. Nobody reacted. He wrote the phrase down on his notepad and underlined it twice. He sat through the rest of the meeting in complete silence and handed his resignation to HR before Derek had made it back to his desk. 44. A woman used the office bathroom on her second day and noticed immediately that the stall doors had a significant gap running along the left side from top to bottom. She assumed it was a minor oversight. She used the bathroom again the following week and made accidental direct eye contact with a woman washing her hands at the sink through the sunskip. Both of them froze for a moment that lasted approximately 1,000 years. She finished and walked straight to HR and explained the situation in full professional detail. HR said it was a ventilation feature. She cleaned out her desk that afternoon because ventilation had never required eye contact before. 45. She had agreed to participate in the company team photo because she was a team player and wanted to show willing. She arrived on the day and stood in the front row because she was among the tallest people present. And that was simply how team photos worked. The photographer moved her to the back row without explanation. She asked why. The photographer said it was about composition. She looked at the front row. Every person standing there was shorter than her by a visible and measurable amount. The photo went up on the company website 3 days later. She submitted her resignation the same morning it went live. 46. A woman received an IT notification on the 1st of the month informing her that her password needed to be changed immediately. She changed it to something sensible and moved on with her day. 30 days later, the notification appeared again. She tried a variation of her previous password. The system rejected it. She tried another variation, rejected again. She spent 40 minutes creating something entirely new that she immediately forgot. This happened every single month for 7 months in a row. On the 8th month, She attempted to use a creative spelling of the word password out of sheer desperation, and the system rejected it with what felt like personal judgment. She resigned and submitted her final password change as her last official act. 47. He walked into the break room on his third day and noticed a large whiteboard mounted on the wall with the words "Ideas Wall" written across the top in enthusiastic capital letters. He uncapped a marker and got ready to contribute. Then he noticed there was already one idea written on the board. It said "Better Snacks." He looked at the date written next to it. It was from 2021. He looked around the break room. He looked back at the board. 3 years had passed, and not one single person had added a second idea or acted on the first one. He put the cap back on the marker and handed in his notice the following morning. 48. A woman received her updated employee profile from HR and scrolled down to review the reporting structure section. It listed her direct supervisor clearly. The name was fine. The title was not fine. Her direct supervisor held the official company title of Chief Vibe Officer. She read it again. Chief Vibe Officer. She sat quietly for a moment, thinking about all the career decisions that had led her to this exact point in her professional life. She emailed HR asking for clarification on what a Chief Vibe Officer was responsible for. HR responded saying it was a culture and energy-focused leadership role. She submitted her resignation within the hour and specifically requested a reference from anyone other than the Vibe department. 49. A man noticed the air freshener mounted near his desk during his first week and thought nothing of it. By week 3, he had subconsciously registered that it sprayed every 12 minutes with absolute mechanical precision. By month 2, he noticed his shoulders tensed slightly about 30 seconds before each spray. By month 4, his body had fully developed a stress response to the smell of fresh linen that he could not explain to anyone in his personal life. His doctor asked him during a routine checkup if anything at work was causing him anxiety. He described the air freshener in full clinical detail. His doctor suggested a career change. He agreed immediately and resigned the following morning. And there you have it, 49 real human beings who looked at their careers and decided that a beige carpet, 8 almonds, and a Chief Vibe Officer were valid reasons to walk out forever. And honestly, nobody in this video was wrong. If this list made you laugh or quietly question your own workplace situation, hit that like button right now and subscribe to Brain Fumble because we find these people, so you never feel alone. Turn on notifications so you never miss one. Now tell us in the comments which one of these 49 would have made you quit the fastest